We're going to explain the couldn't find metadata for provider with authority error in Android. This frustrating error typically pops up when your app tries to access data from a content provider, but it can't find the necessary metadata to do so. This metadata acts like a directory, telling your app where to find the data it needs. The problem is usually related to how your app interacts with the content provider, and often involves misconfigurations in your write single quote Android manifest.xml write single quote file or incorrect usage of content provider APIs. Let's tackle the common causes and solutions. 1. Incorrect or missing provider declaration in write single quote Android manifest.xml. This is the most frequent culprit. Your app needs to explicitly declare the content provider it intends to use within the manifest tag of your write single quote Android manifest.xml write single quote file. This declaration uses the provider element and needs accurate information like the authority, a unique identifier for the provider, and the provider class name. Double-check for any typos in the authority name. Even a small mistake will cause this error. Ensure the provider's class name is fully qualified, including the package name. 2. Authority. Mismatch. The authority specified in your write single quote Android manifest.xml. Write single quote must exactly match the authority used by the content provider itself. A single character difference or a wrong case will break things. Verify that the authority in your app's manifest is identical to the authority used by the external library or the system content provider you're accessing. 3. Permissions issues. Some content providers require specific permissions before your app can access them. Make sure your app's manifest correctly declares the necessary permissions using the uses permission tag. If the provider needs read or write access, request the relevant permissions in the manifest and handle runtime permission requests, if targeting Android 6.0 or higher. 4. Incorrect content provider usage. Your code might be using the content provider incorrectly. Review how you're querying data. Are you using the correct URI, which includes the authority? Are you handling exceptions appropriately? A common mistake is to try and access the provider before it's fully initialized. Always check for null values before interacting with a content provider's returned cursor. 5. Dependency issues. If you're using a third-party library that involves a content provider, ensure that the library is correctly included as a dependency in your write single quote build.gradle write single quote file. Outdated or corrupted libraries can also lead to this error, so try cleaning and rebuilding your project or checking for updates. 6. Android emulator device issues. In rare cases, problems with the Android emulator or the actual device you are using might be the culprit. Try cleaning your project, restarting your emulator, or testing on a different device. Addressing these points systematically, starting with verifying the write single quote Android manifest.xml write single quote provider declaration, often resolves the couldn't find metadata for provider with authority error. Remember to thoroughly check for typos, carefully compare authorities, and double-check your permissions and the correct usage of your content provider throughout your code. Thorough debugging using logcat messages can also help pinpoint the exact location and nature of the